Hello and welcome to Tell Us Your Effing Story, a podcast by franchisors for franchisors. Goes behind the scenes with some of the most interesting people in the franchising sector. I'm your host, Bruce McFarlane, co-host John Sully, and today we're here with Peter Bailey, who doesn't really know how to spell Bailey. We've just learned that there's supposed to be an E in your name, Peter. Why is there no E?
Well, it's one of those surnames you can actually spell it about a dozen different ways if you go looking.
Bailey's pretty basic. Sully, McFarlane,
yeah, but no E, extra special, I like to think.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So John, welcome.
Tell us your fucking story.
Okay, so it's franchising story. So we just have to keep John under control.
Right.
Do have a potty mouth.
Yeah, set the scene. We will going back. But we're going to go back, start,
Okay.
So where it all began, where are you from, tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, yeah, look, I grew up in Tassie, actually, so proud Tassie, born and raised.
Yeah.
And whereabouts? Hobart?
Hobart,
Yep. Beautiful part of the
Beautiful part of the world.
Yeah.
And kind of went to university down there, did a commerce degree, and like a lot of good Tasmanians, I left as soon as I finished that degree, moved to Melbourne.
We're going to go straight and don't want to move from Tassie.
Oh, right, okay.
Should there be a roof on the stadium? The big question at the moment.
I think yes.
Yeah. Oh, really?
I think
It
yes.
doesn't rain that much in Tassie, though.
Second driest capital
Yeah, that's
city in
what-
Australia.
Yeah. So why
Is
do they?
that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Why
But-
do they need a roof then?
Well, I just think you look at some of the grounds now. We have outstanding footy grounds, and having a roof just gives it that all-purpose, not only for footy but for anything you want to do. And it gets cold down there in winter, so
It's
I
bloody
think
cold.
Is this the big debate at the moment?
So at the moment, sport and politics have got this, where this will go to air and they'll probably have sorted it all out by then. But at the moment, it's a big issue.
well, we're going to another election off the back of it. Some would say. So
Yeah, the
This is
government.
for the new team that's
Yeah,
started
yeah.
down there, right?
So
okay.
the AFL have put a requirement that there had to be a stadium in all the clubs, and then the politicians said yes, and then the other side of politics said maybe not. Anyway,
Wow.
but growing up in Hobart though, so a beautiful place, and tell us a bit more about the family. Like, are you mum and dad still in Hobart, or did you move away?
Yeah, I've still got family down there, but our family's kind of dispersed now. And again, I think that is a bit of a Tasmanian thing that sometimes people go looking for other opportunities. But I still go back, and I'm probably going back a little bit more now to sort of support aging parents. So,
So there, okay.
yeah.
And siblings?
Three
Wonderful.
sisters, in fact.
Oh,
So
geez, where are you in the line there?
I'm number 3 out of 4.
Oh.
So tough upbringing.
Well, probably, I don't know, we spoke to Richard, who you know earlier, and he's one of 4 boys. So I reckon having the girls in the family, they would have looked after you a little bit.
No.
Mate, I got 3 older sisters. There are a lot of photos with me in dresses.
Yeah. There's all that, and of course there's a job to be done. I was the one stuck with it. So
Shit.
Yeah, go and get the wood.
that's it.
Oh,
What if you don't mind me asking? What did your mum and dad do? What were their jobs?
Look, my mum looked after the home, as many people sort of did back in those days, if you like. And my father worked for the Parliamentary Council writing legislation for the state.
Fuck.
Public servant, yeah.
What, that's
Heavy job.
yeah.
Yeah.
How the hell did he get into that?
Look, when he sort of finished school, his mother said, well, you should join the public service because that's a really safe thing to do. Not
In
actually
Tassie too.
in Tassie, not what he wanted to do, but it is what he did, and that was his entire career.
Wow.
And so straight from school, stayed the same job.
Yep.
And retired at what age?
He got sort of pensioned off in his 50s.
Yeah, because they get out early with lots of money to super fun.
That's right. So no sort of business background, although his father, my grandfather, absolutely owned a business down there. And so if you go back, but in my sort of upbringing, really no business sense whatsoever.
But clearly multi-generational in Tassie. You've got lots of long roots down there.
Absolutely. It goes back to, I think my great-great-grandfather came out from England.
On the boat?
On a boat.
Not with chains on?
He was a cabinet maker for the bishop.
Oh,
The
right.
bishop got a cabinet maker as part of his staff. And that's where sort of the
Family folklore.
that's it. And been sort of going from then.
So what else as a kid? You played sport, most in Tassie, it's all about Footy and cricket? Like
All about
most-
footy and cricket, but I didn't really play either, to be honest. I was a sailor, so I lived close to the beach. So at a young age, got a small dinghy and raced dinghies and then bigger boats. And so
Sydney to Hobart?
Have you done that?
I haven't done the Sydney Hobart. I've done the Launceston to Hobart, I think 3 times, and so done some lots of inshore and offshore racing. Did the Three Peaks race once. That's a tough one. But haven't done a Sydney yet. But if anyone's listening and wants a crew member, just give me a call.
Launceston to Hobart, how long would that take on a big maxis? Were you doing it
Yeah,
on maxis?
no, much smaller boats, sort of 36 footers. But it's actually in some respects more complex because it's a heavy navigation course, coastal sailing. You've got a few choices to make about the route you take, but ultimately we would start a day after the Sydney Hobart. You're coming around Tasman Island and you are meeting the Sydney Hobart fleet. And so that's
what's the point?
It's great. Yeah. And then you're going through the same finish line. You're tying up at the wharf. It's fantastic.
And crowds of people there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we raced the very first time they ever held the event. We were the first across the line, first out of the heads of the Tamar, first across the finishing line. We cleaned up. We won line honours, handicap, the whole lot. First race. So yeah, it's
Are you still involved in sailing?
Yeah, look, I've got my own boat. I don't get out as much as I would like to, but it's something I'm trying to correct. But something I want to do a lot more of, into the future.
Just by the by, that going across the top there, that's roaring 40s or something that goes on there. So
you're in Bass
that's
Strait.
crazy weather.
Yeah, you're in Bass Strait, and you can get a bit of anything. And also, as you go around that top sort of northeastern corner of Tassie, lots of currents, quite shallow water. So it's actually, again, quite technical kind of sailing and navigation.
Where do you keep the boat if you're at Wahroonga?
I got my boat at Newport.
Right.
Sort of up in the northern.
That's not that far.
Yeah, northern beaches there. And there's a beautiful, the whole Pittwater, Broken Bay area, up into the rivers. Yeah, a beautiful area.
Yeah. And so at school, so what sort of what did you enjoy about school? What subjects did you do, or what did you what did you want to be when you grew up when you were 10?
Oh, when I was 10, gee, I don't think I really had that worked out when I was 10.
Can't say fireman either.
Yeah, no, there was a moment when I actually wanted to be a TV cameraman, but I soon dispelled that. Then it moved to musician because I am a musician, but I
What do you play?
I used to be a drummer. I've since converted to bass because that's a little easier in some respects, and a bit of guitar as well. But so then at school, really, the school I went to had pretty limited kind of range of subjects you could even study. So it was you were kind of either a maths and science person or you were a trade person. That was about the only options. So I took the sort of maths and science route, and really through to year 12, that's what I did. And then I got to the end of that, thought, what the hell am I going to do? I had no idea because I wasn't that great really at that science piece. And my father was friends with the dean of economics at the local university, who was round for lunch one day, and he said, "Oh well, why don't you give this a try, commerce?" And I'd always had this kind of interest in business.
Had you had part-time jobs?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Where'd you work?
Coles Fossies.
Yeah.
Back
Coles
in
Fossies.
back in the day.
Back in the
Showing my
day,
age,
that's
aren't I?
right, yeah.
So look, I started there when I was 16 and ran all the way through to the end of university. It was an
Right. Oh, okay.
awesome job.
Yeah.
Great.
What did you do?
Yeah, good grounding. Look, anything
pack
from
shelves and-
anything from packing shelves to checkout to ultimately running a floor of that shop.
It's also good socially as well. Hanging out with lots of mates and
That's it. Yeah, we had a great time, and it paid the bills. And that plus a little bit of music was kind of what I did.
Oh, you got paid to play music?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So you're pretty handy then. Or did you have a band?
I had a band. Yeah,
Did you have long hair?
I did. I had a mullet.
Had a mullet.
I had hair.
We're all
I had hair. I had a mullet. I remember cutting the mullet off, in fact, in my last year of university as the job offers started to come through. I cleaned up Mac a little bit and has not returned since.
That's funny.
And groupies then?
Look, that might be slightly, stretching the truth, but sure, there's a few people I'd like to come to.
Did you marry someone that you met in a gig?
No.
Who were we?
Michelle.
Michelle, yeah. So
Do you know Michelle from any
Yeah,
friends?
yeah. There's a few of us about, of course.
The FCA band, we're going to.
yeah, bring a
Greg
band back
Nathan?
together.
Well, funny story. We did set up a band in one of the organisations I worked in, and played at one of our conferences.
That's cool.
so I've had some
Love to
fun.
play
Do you
this.
sing as well, or
A bit. You wouldn't call me a singer, especially nowadays, but I used to do a few backup vocals.
Cool.
So uni, did that.
Yeah.
Moved up here, doing what?
I moved to Melbourne.
Moved to
so
Melbourne,
so got a job with KPMG in Melbourne and started as, in the chartered accounting world and did chartered accounting for kind of 5
What year is that?
I started that job 91.
Because it was pretty, like we're similar age and a lot of my mates were coming out of uni around that time. It wasn't that easy to get jobs. Melbourne wasn't in a good place in 1991.
Well, this is the recession we had to have,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, and I remember, I got my job. I had my starting salary. Maybe we were 2 or 3 months in, and then everyone's got called in and
The big retrenchments.
mass redundancies. And they said to me, you can have a job, but it involves a pay cut. So I said, thanks, I'll take that pay cut.
So want to stay in Melbourne.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And stayed in the job. And it took a little while to get even back to where I started, but those were the times it was tough.
So how many years did you do at KPMG?
About 5 years in sort of the chartered accounting. I did a little bit of time overseas in Singapore as well, and such a good grounding, great education. They work you super hard. Work you hard, but you're out and about dealing with clients, learning businesses, kind of learning that accounting craft, if you like.
Good grounding.
Absolutely.
And the first look at the franchise. So is Banjo's the first one?
Yeah. So I decided, you sort of grow up in those firms. You're either someone who thinks they can make it almost go through partnership level, if you like, or you realise actually, because you see people who've been trying to do that and don't get there. And for me, I was pretty clear that I really wanted to make money rather than count money. So run businesses rather than support businesses.
So you knew that back then because your first job at Banjo's was to count money.
It was.
Other people.
It was.
So financial controller, roles like that.
But it was quite a broad role. And that business in Tassie is pretty iconic and dominant. And so, I decided to go back to Tassie, and that was a role that came up.
Are you single?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. And went into that business, a great business, right? Now, how many franchisors were there in Tassie at that time? I reckon there was only one.
There was one, and didn't they have a group of one franchisee that had a few sites as well? Was that later?
Yeah, that's a bit later, I think.
Later,
It was a small franchise. I can't remember, maybe 10 or 12 stores.
Yeah.
On my first day or something, we did a trip around all the stores, which was quite a trip around the state, but there wasn't that many stores to get around.
So you've gone in as, from the big smoke and...
Yep.
So you were the CFO?
Yeah, or financial controller was,
Right.
but it was quite a broad financial controller's role.
So 27-ish? You had 27?
No, 26 maybe. So but it was a great business. Very profitable franchisees, really good business for franchisor. Such a broad business, quite complex, but a really good business. So,
and did they have company owned stores as well? That So it was part franchise, part company owned.
Yeah.
And you had to sort of manage. Doing it all.
And so you're a manufacturer at a school, in the store because every product was made fresh. And just for those who don't know that concept, it's like a Baker's Delight, maybe a Subway, a Gloria Jeans, all sort of spun together. It's a big bakery with a cafe sort of front end and a really broad sort of product range.
And that was from day one.
Day one.
Yeah. So people are going in there to buy their bread instead of going to Baker's Delight.
That's it.
But, buy a coffee.
Buy a coffee, buy your lunch, buy some.
Yeah. Is it dinner as well or just?
Not specifically.
It was breakfast and lunch.
Breakfast, lunch, snacks, food for home, the whole thing.
I think Vaughan and Keith have done some work for them, or we've done some
BDC, work. They've been a client of BDC, different parts of BDC more recently, the last
and
few
it's
years.
the dad still alive. He's sort of still involved in it, but the daughter is running it now, something like that.
Yeah, certainly the kids are now
super sharp. She's really sharp.
Yeah, the kids have been involved, so it's gone second generation.
So you did so with different roles. He got out of the finance role into a services role, so out of counting the money and starting to make money.
The role just kind of expanded over time, right? Just took on more and more, and as the business was expanding as well, had a bit of a property portfolio, so did a fair bit of stuff in the property space as well, and so I think that opportunity just kind of kept coming, and I kind of just kept on grabbing those. I think it was really interesting because great business, keen to be a great franchisor, but when you're in a market of one, who are your peers? Who do you network with? You know, we were very isolated, and I think as the years went by, there was certainly some tension with franchisees, and there was a point I remember where we actually sort of pivoted, and we went outside the state for legal advice, right? So we went to Deacon's, as it was, Norton Rose, Fulbright now. We changed our lawyers. We attended the franchise conference, NFC. I networked heavily, and all of a sudden,
at this time, are you MD at this time, or are you?
No, this is just pre-MD sort of stage, I think. But we kind of just sucked all that stuff in, and I think we made quite a number of changes off the back of that, improvements, and kind of polished the best practice sort of franchise model, if you like, because we hadn't really had anywhere to kind of learn that stuff. And so that was massively valuable for me. I networked heavily, I sucked it all in. And I think that was really a real turning point sort of in my career, if you like. And many of those people we met in those early days are still people I network with today and talk to, and have worked with some of those over the years
And
as
did
well.
you think when you were doing that, did you think that Banjo's was a long way off where it should be, or not far off from what you started to access all of those other people? And
You were doing some stuff pretty well.
It was always a really good business, and so I think it was that. I think it had done a lot of work on back end and not enough actually, almost on front end of the growth side and franchise recruitment and even just getting the agreements right and how you sort of manage a group of franchisees and sort of mentor them for performance and all those sorts of things. So I think it was the polish, and that was also just a maturing of the business in some respects, because it wasn't long after that I probably became MD.
Yeah, well, I was going to get to that because it's a family business, still a family business.
Yep.
You're not family.
Yep.
Your name's back. So how being, and you're in your 30s too.
Yeah.
So you're now the MD of a family business, has been around for a number of years.
Yes.
How did that that's an interesting transition. That's great, but does have challenges too.
The owner stepped back to some extent, and we put a board in place, advisory
doing
board
lots
in
of good
place.
things to grow, for the business to grow.
Absolutely, and then we really sort of re-looked at the whole model and how do we actually set the thing up for growth and all those sorts of things. So again, I was there for 14 years, a long time.
Right?
Yeah,
Good on you.
And I think it was the fact that it just kept on evolving, and there was always something sort of new that we'd do, and such a great learning.
And were they on the
environment as well.
mainland then? Well, I mean, no. Yeah, when you took over as MD, had they got onto the mainland yet? Or
They'd been on the mainland very much earlier in the business's history, but all that had been closed.
Right.
And so then we sort of relaunched into Melbourne first, and then spread beyond.
So how many do you reckon they had when you left?
About 45, maybe 40, 45.
Okay.
But you do need to think about it a bit differently, because one of those stores might be worth 2 or 3 stores in a different brand. They are big businesses, big footprints, big turnover.
Yeah, and so they're all single unit franchisees at the time.
Oh, look, there was a couple multis.
Yeah.
People had maybe 2, 2 or 3. So,
so you've got your early days in franchising is in a franchise system that didn't have a lot of people to learn from, but then you've sort of had to come and get some of that information.
That's right.
From external consultants and stuff. But the board, when you were MD, who was on the board? Were you involved in picking the people?
I selected the board.
Yeah.
And so we got some great franchising people on the board. Rod Young was one, someone who's been around for a long, long time, amongst a group of others. So got a fantastic board together. And really sort of set about growing that business.
So next.
Well, then I'm going to jump to one. I don't know if it's next, which is a business that you weren't for very long, which ended up at RFG.
Yeah.
Were they at Gloria Jean's?
Gloria Jean's.
So, very short stay at Gloria Jean's.
Well, it's interesting, right? I mentioned that you started going to conferences and met people, and I met someone from Gloria Jean's, and sort of we kept in touch over time. And ultimately, I joined that business because I was going to go through and run their European operations.
Oh, right.
So now we're in the GFC territory.
yeah.
So
Right.
this is just
So
probably pre-GFC.
So owned by Peter and Nabi.
Yep.
At this time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So because obviously John was Michelle, so it was around this time that you sold to RFG, Michelle's brand. Yeah. Okay. So,
And so
you're a
so Glory Jeans.
holiday.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's right. Glory Jeans at that point had about 900 odd stores. About half of those were in Australia, half of those were overseas.
So they bought out the US rights. And
Yeah,
stuff.
and so that happened while I was there. So
Yeah.
I was in the overseas team, international team. So looking after as COO, looking after the international side of the business. Didn't really delve into the Australian business much at all, and I joined that because there was always this. We were always working on. I was going to go and sort of run the European operations out of the UK. That was the whole plan. And did a few other things because they kind of just weren't ready, and there was a few problems with masters and things over there. In the end, though, the GFC was raging, if you like. The master franchisee in the UK went broke, and so there were some problems. It just became clear to me that that sort of ambition, if you like, wasn't going to come to be.
We do a bit of stuff with RFG now, and so I've seen some of those stores, like in Turkey and some countries, like they're smashing. They've done really well. So out of that, you know, the Gloria Jean's brand is pretty good in some countries, and others are just tanked.
Well, absolutely, and I think that was a really great lesson in, you know, what countries do you go to? What models do you implement in different countries? How do you do that whole global expansion piece? What's the strategic view look like, maybe versus opportunistic play?
And did you have kids then?
Yes, I did.
Because by that age, your kids are similar age to my kids. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you're jumping on planes and stuff and living in Melbourne still.
No.
Or do you had to move to Sydney?
My family was in Tassie still.
Oh, right.
I flew back and forth between
Sydney?
Tassie every week. Yeah. Did that for sort of 6 months because we were going to
Move
the UK.
to Europe.
To Europe.
Getting ready
There was no point bringing the family and moving them twice.
Was your wife working?
No, she was
Just
just
because you had the kids.
she was looking after the kids, doing bits and pieces of some voluntary work and stuff. But my youngest was, when I started, about 12 months old. So she had 3 kids, like 6 and under.
Oh, she's
And you're jumping on planes, we were at the airport today, and I was telling John the same story. I had 4 kids, and I was jumping on planes to come up here every week, and it's tiring.
But full credit to her. It was when she got really organised, structured, and it meant then that I really have spent my working career travelling, and she managed the home and kept everything, kept the lights on, kept it managed well.
So you weren't there that long, but you were travelling backwards and forwards to Sydney.
Yep.
Your next is Luxottica. Is that next?
Yeah, Luxottica.
And that's up here though,
correct.
as well.
So it was clear that the Gloria Jean sort of vision, if you like, wasn't going to come to pass. So went looking for something else. Luxottica, and for those who don't know, Luxottica's OPSM, Sunglass Heart, Budget Eyewear. They had a whole bunch of brands, Lorben and Pank, and they'd started franchising, 6 or 12 months earlier. Had an optometrist run the project, and it just wasn't right. And they'd launched, they had franchisees, but things were not working. Franchisees were not happy. So they went looking for some expertise,
and at the time,
if you like.
who owns it at the time? Is it listed?
Yeah, listed on the Milan and New York stock exchanges.
Yeah.
So dual listing.
Back then,
back big business, big global
massive,
business.
yeah.
But the local CEO was very pro franchisor. He could see that was his growth angle, because OPSM and that business had grown through acquisition over the years. There's only so much, there weren't too many other brands to acquire in some respects. So franchising to drive store performance, but also franchising to convert
and this is
small
before
independents.
Specsavers as well.
Well, interesting. They came in sort of just as I started.
Oh, right.
And they were a very serious competitor. Pretty ruthless in the marketplace, pretty tough.
Yeah, we did some work for a couple of optometry brands that had, 20 or 30 or 50. We franchised a couple of them, and Specsavers just bang, bought them. And so, but so the role, even though, so you've moved the family out of Tassie.
Moved the family.
Up to Sydney. How'd that go?
Great. Took a little bit of adjustment. My kids were young.
So that's all right.
Yeah, they just sort of straight into it.
What about your wife? She's the one that's stuck at home in Sydney.
Well, interestingly, she grew up in Sydney.
Okay.
But it took her probably the longest to actually adjust.
Yeah, because you're travelling around, and
that's it.
Are you flying to Milan yet?
No, unfortunately. But it was interesting because that business they'd started, it had a whole world of problems. So we had to sort of get a team together and fix a whole bunch of the problems. but grew it to kind of 150 franchisees over 5.5 years. Won
So
Emerging Franchisor of the Year award.
It's
we did some great stuff.
emerging franchisor, but it's a listed company out of Milan. But it's
Yeah.
so it's well, because we've done a few of these and talking about capitalization of franchise systems,
Yep.
and particularly in the emerging space, to win the Emerging Franchisor of the Year, but you've got a listed company behind you is pretty helpful. But
Yep.
it is interesting that it's a listed company that wanted franchising to be a key pillar of
Well,
it.
it's interesting, right? Because it's a big business and it's corporately controlled right across the world.
Yeah.
And we were the divergent, if you like.
Okay.
And so the local CEO, very pro, understood it, got it, and supported me enormously doing what I was doing. But Milan, totally different story. They mistrusted it and took a fair bit of work to get the CEO on board globally to sort of say, yeah, okay, this thing works. It
Got
makes
150
sense.
of them. You've
But it's
early
just, I
doors.
remember some of those meetings and working through the numbers. But it's interesting when you've got these big corporate businesses, some of those stores really can underperform. Because they've just got employees in them and employees manage them and big structures. I know some we franchised corporate stores and the performance improvement was off the charts.
So what would you have been budgeting when you did that for growth when it franchised from corporate?
As far as total store numbers?
Revenue increase in an individual store. So changes from corporate. Like was it significant? Like you just said it was. So was it 20-30% growth?
Look, I think you'd sit down and look at the numbers for a store because it was quite a complex business as far as some of the moving parts. We would sit down and say, well, what if we, got more optometry? Because if you don't have an optometrist, and optometrists, there's a shortage in Australia.
Yeah.
Then you've already got a problem, right? So if you have an optometrist as part of that transaction, then all of a sudden you've got an uplift, and that'd be very different to a store that had full-time optometry. But I know one guy, he bought 2 stores, and the first one, he did a little bit of an improvement, didn't relocate it, got his team right, trained them well, and just sold well, doubled the turnover. Off the charts stuff.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, mind blowing.
And were they making good money as corporate stores anyhow?
Yeah, I think it's a good business model.
Yeah, your bottom 20% probably.
Correct. But a big business, and so I think it's a great opportunity. But you have to have an optometrist.
Yeah.
And optometrists as a profession, they are lovely people because they are there to care for your health and care for your eyes.
For the
They've got to run a business.
But they've got to run a business.
It's a pharmacy model, the optometry model, like a lot of these where there's health professionals running a business that's got a retail element to it.
Correct.
It's a really interesting mix.
Yeah, so we did a lot of work on, how do you optimize that and all the various things. And some of them really kind of took to it, but others it was
So
more
what was
challenging.
your role in that? What was your
So
title?
I looked after franchising and acquisitions.
Okay.
So a bit of an M&A role, and that sort of building and managing the franchise channel with a sort of.
And how did you go? Because you went from being the MD CEO of a family business, sort of different title down in terms of title, but in a massive global business.
That's right.
Huge
as an employee.
And I think I'd got to this sort of comfort level, if you like, of running a domestic franchise, right? I can do that, no problems. I really wanted to get global experience. And that's why I sort of made the decision with Gloria Jeans and ultimately then joined a big publicly listed global company, is to sort of get a bit more of that global franchising exposure, experience, and learn how to do that and do it well.
That would have been a really cool time because there's a lot of moving parts in that transition, isn't there?
Yeah.
Was Adam Davidson, was he there then? Do you remember that?
Don't remember
name?
that name.
He's still, anyhow.
But it's interesting though, like you've got global experience and global retail experience and, like very successful brand. But in terms of franchising, it's not a global franchise experience.
No, I really started it from nothing.
No, that's right. So you're still building a franchise model from the ground up.
Correct.
In an industry that don't want to be called a franchise. Like the people with a degree in something health often don't want to be franchisees.
That's right.
And so you've got to bring them along on that journey as well.
Well, you've also got an industry that is corporatizing.
You're bucking the trick because it's going the other way. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're going from highly fragmented to
because there's hundreds of one-man band optoms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so certainly OPSM had started that journey, but then you've got spec savers coming in. And so there's a whole corporatization. You could just see it happening in front of you.
With a supply issue, because there's not enough optoms. So you're trying to find them. Because the model we looked at was how to get them out of uni.
Yep.
And I know that obviously in the pharmacy, that's what Chemist Warehouse, and they've done the same thing. Pull them out of uni,
Well,
or from overseas.
How did you guys deal with that?
Well, I would often talk to university students or the graduate intake because it was really one of the career paths you could take in that business, and there were many. And so, we would start early on of if that's something you want to do, then have a chat to us and we can take you on that journey over time.
Were there many at the time that were studying that or doing that? Like at uni, was it diminishing the amount of people that were coming out?
I think the universities controlled the market pretty tightly, but then the type of person who was becoming an optometrist was also changing. So highly skewed to Asian female. So people that come in from overseas to do the degree, and those people didn't want to leave the big cities. Yet the demand and the money to some extent was all
regional.
And so, it was interesting business, lots of opportunities and challenges.
And did they roll that model out into other countries after it was successful here, or did they stay corporate?
They stayed corporate. I did a bit of work in China, in fact, about rolling it out in China, but we never kind of got to that point. Did some work with Oakley over in the US. Again, Oakley has, at that stage had a franchising element in it.
Right.
So bits and pieces. But I think my turning point in that business is when the global CEO changed. I got back to this point of, now I've got to re-educate another global global CEO around franchising, bring them along on the journey. And I think at that point I sort of thought, no, maybe it's time for me to do something else. And I'd been tapped on the shoulder as well.
Well, you did, it's nearly 6 years, I think it's that you've done there. So that's a decent stint there.
Yeah.
And very interesting time. But so again, then you've gone into another family business for the next role. So at Narellan and in a COO role. So you're in a sales and acquisition role. Now you're in charge of operations.
Yep.
But how many franchisees did Narellan have at the time?
Ooh, good question. I think there was probably kind of 35, 40-ish, something like that.
Yeah. And so it's...
Are they Melbourne-based, Sydney-based? Narellan, what's the Narellan story?
Narellan, the suburb of Sydney. So that's where Narellan Pools started with a guy who was a pool builder. And this is when fiberglass, because it's a 54-year-old business now. And so he was a pool builder, lived in Narellan, and as fiberglass as a technology is emerging, right? He thought, well, I'll make a fiberglass pool in my backyard. And that's pretty much what he did. So you got to make a mold, made a mold, then you put the fiberglass on it and you build your pool. He would then sell that pool and install it. And so the brand started. And then he'd do another and another. And
did you know anything about this when you were looking at this job?
Look,
you were trying to put a pool in the backyard.
Well, not quite, although I did. But that it was started, that got it to about, I don't know, they might have been doing 60-odd, 70 pools, I think. I can't even remember the numbers, a year. So it's got a small business. And then it got taken over by two brothers who then sort of took it to a certain stage. And then the son of one of those was who I ended up working for.
Right.
Who had sort of taken over the running of the business. And again, you got 50 plus years of history.
And so how big are they now?
Well, big, because part of what I did was grow it in Australia, and again, still this global sort of opportunity, if you like. They exported to quite a number of markets, but wanted to grow the global side. So I kind of jumped in, and there was really good bones. It's a big manufacturing business. 2 factories in Australia, so manufacturing drives that business and that model. It's not a royalty-based franchise. You make money by selling product by selling the pools. And so we had some work to do to fix Australia and grow Australia. And with a manufacturing business, a good one, as soon as you start to push some more volume in, all of a sudden, good things start happening to your P&L.
So you went from COO to development, so selling franchises? or
No, so
what's development in Narellan Pool's world?
well, I think the COO piece was more so really what I looked after was pretty much everything except for manufacturing. I didn't dive too deeply into manufacturing. The owner of the business very much looked after that. I looked after everything else, and that was pretty symbiotic, I think. We set about growing it. Then we exported pools to New Zealand, but we kind of then franchised that. It's got a loose relation or agreements, if you like. Set up a franchise structure, ultimately built a factory in New Zealand, massive competitive advantage. Then sort of did the same in Canada, which again was an export market. We had a distributor there. Took over and just did it because we just couldn't get the traction we wanted with distributors. It just wasn't working. And until we made the decision of let's just go and invest and do it ourselves and build a factory and all of a sudden
not cheap to set up, I wouldn't have thought.
No, not cheap to set up, but all of a sudden off it goes.
And so the family is still in there, and then you became MD.
Yeah, so I sort of started fixing Australia, if you like.
Yeah.
Then I've had very much an international focus. So I really started looking after the offshore stuff.
Canada, New Zealand.
Yeah, and
US?
Well, then, yeah, so we started to think about US. But the owners of that business had a 7-year plan, and they outlined that to me in the interview process, essentially, to lead up to some sort of an exit. And we did that in 4 years. So we really worked very hard on
the
that.
last two, you're the CEO at that point.
No, so I took it through and we got that transaction done. So we by this point, we've sorted out Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and we're starting to have a look at the US. And to do the US properly, you need 8 or 9 plants, right? Big money. And so we went looking kind of for capital, and ultimately that ended up as a sale to Latham Pool Products, which is the largest pool manufacturer in the world now.
So did you appoint an advisor here or there?
Here.
Yeah.
So we'd been very much cleaning up the business, if you like, and kind of setting it up for something like this anyway. But we sort of we had Deloitte here working with us, but I did all the work to really kind of ultimately put it out in the marketplace. Latham very much put their hand up and said, yeah, this is something we'd like to be involved with. So the owners pushed all their equity upstream up into the US parent then. And so this is 2019 we're up to now.
And was Latham a public?
No. So at that point, that's
private?
right. At that point, we're a wholly owned subsidiary of Latham Pool Products in the US, which has quite a significant PE ownership of that business.
And they were, sorry to keep interrupting, I'm just interested that they were doing fiberglass pools.
Yes.
Only,
no, quite a diversified pool business.
Right.
And fiberglass pools in the US in 2019 emerging.
Still early.
Yeah, still early because the pool market was 20, 25 years sort of behind where the Australian market was at. And they could see strategically that was a wave they wanted to ride. So they were investing heavily in fiberglass, and I think it really helped to have us as part of that process as well, because we were a very mature fiberglass business. In Australia, some sort of 65-70% of all pools sold will be fiberglass pools. In the US back then, it was sub 15%. Massive opportunity for conversion. But they do what's called a steel wall vinyl line pool. You don't even buy them in Australia anymore. Haven't for many, many years. Almost don't exist. And quite a diversified pool business.
So why did it take off here and not in the US? Like what?
I think it's a bit about
climate or?
No, I think it's a bit about
concrete, cheap labour.
Well, it's a bit about that. I think in the US the market can be driven by the businesses that dominate in that market. So if you went Googling for a pool, you wouldn't even find a fiberglass pool, because the big businesses were these vinyl lined pools, and they were the ones that kind of controlled the installers and the voice in the marketplace.
Yeah, right.
And what is actually a better product didn't really get any headway. It's changing now because they were just too small in the marketplace. And when you've got a big market like the US, it operates a bit differently.
So what does it look like there now? They've got multiple factories in multiple states.
Yeah, so we joined in 2019, 2021, in the heart of the pandemic. The company floated. So now the company's NASDAQ-listed, has 9 fiberglass plants across US, Canada. And so our plant that we had in Canada came into the fold, and now they've moved that and expanded it massively. So you've now got 9 fiberglass plants servicing that North American market.
Turning over.
Big numbers.
What's the
It's
value on the
publicly
stock
listed,
exchange?
so yeah, so you can go and have a look at it. I think current numbers are around sort of 550 million turnover USD, something like that.
Massive.
And
It's
that's
great.
and that's in a tougher,
What a great story.
in a tougher market.
So let's go back to your roles and all this. So you've had an acquisition role, at Luxottica, and in doing this. So now you help the owners get ready for sale.
Yep.
So that was part of a 7-year plan.
Yes.
So you did take your time in getting it organised and using advisors. So
7-year plan that we knocked over in 4.
Yeah.
So we will work.
And what about
No.
and it's a franchise business, though.
Yep.
In Australia. So
Correct.
how many franchisees did you have at the exit time?
We had about 50 odd franchisees across ANZ operating in about.
So it hadn't
60
grown
or
massively in
Hadn't
franchising.
grown massively, but the territories have grown.
Yeah.
As well, because it's very much a territory-based business.
Yep. So you're keeping your franchisees happy because the business is going well
Yep.
because you want the exit. So did you have company-owned territories as well? Or?
We did when I started, and we ultimately franchised those. We were not a good company-owned operator because we just didn't put the focus on it and the investment in it, and so we strategically decided that we're better not to run these. Franchisees will do a much better job than we will, and we'll put our resources into other areas.
Yeah. So so you've been able to sell franchises along the way. You've grown it. They've been successful. They've, as a franchisor, like you've, from baking pies to selling glasses to making pools, like what sort of things have you learned around supporting your franchisees across the very different industries?
Look, lots, and they are very different industries, albeit they all sort of had a manufacturing element to them. But I think the way in which you support a franchisee wasn't that dissimilar in many respects. I think in the Narellan business, those franchisees ran very big businesses. When you sell a pool, it's not like selling a cup of coffee. It's a big ticket item that's very expensive. And so some of those people had very large businesses. And I think in that business, very much a segmented approach to how we would deal with franchisees, from your high performers who you don't need to be in their face every other day because they're running a very good business already and providing them a totally different support to your new starters or those who might be struggling a bit. We would very much have a segmented approach to it.
And what about recruitment then? So, the skill set of someone that's coming through that market, they're going to be running a pretty big business. So how quickly did they hit the ground running? And
well, it's even more complex than that because to build a pool, you have to have a pool builder's license.
Yep.
So it's like many trades, it's a licensed occupation. And to get a license, requires a bit of effort. And that differs by state a bit, but we would primarily look for people who already had a license because you could go much faster. But the other side of that equation is if you've got a license, can you run a big business and really drive scale? And that's an interesting juxtaposition. And I think on one hand, you might choose you've got to marry the person to the territory. And so it might be that that's a really good person, but they're going to need a territory this big versus someone who might have a bit more sophistication. I think, probably in reflection, we probably sacrificed long-term sort of growth and success with franchisees because we picked people who we could move a bit more quickly with, i.e. they had a license rather than, and I think in hindsight, I might have done a bit more balance of here's someone who's going to take a lot longer to get up and running because they don't have anything, but they're a great business person, versus someone who you can move more quickly with.
So what does that look like? What for a license? It's the same as a builder's license to that extent?
Not quite that extent because that's sort of the top of the pile, but
but not
a step.
far from.
Yeah, you've got to, if you want to get one, you've got to sit a course and you've got to have experience, and you, depending on the state again, put together a portfolio of this is the work I've done, so that the regulators know that if you go and install a pool, it's going to be done right and operate as it should.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I would have thought that'd be a real corporate person that's going out there and driving it, because it's, that's they're not disrespecting tradies because they're making more money than God at the moment, but that's generally the person, wasn't it? Sort of a more bread and butter. Well, that sounds insulting. It's not what I meant.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's the opportunity. And again, it was quite similar to then optometry when you think about it, right? Because you had to have an optometrist, but were they the best person to really run the best business?
Yeah, same principle.
Maybe, maybe not. But
Baker,
you have to have one.
Banjos. Got a baker in the Banjos right back then too.
Yep.
They're making it on premises.
That's it.
Yeah. So someone who's going to get up early.
That's it.
So what are you doing now? When did you leave there?
So I left in April after 10 years in that business, and I felt it was just time. I think you go through that sort of transition. I think time to do something new.
Well, you're the boss, and now you're dealing with the boss who's in America.
That's it. That's it. So so running the ANZ operations for a publicly listed US company, that comes with a whole bunch of work and
Where's head office in the US?
In a place called Latham, which is upstate New York, so 2 hours out of New York City, north of New York City.
That's a long way.
It's a long way. That's a long way. So it was time for me to do something else.
How often did you have to go over?
I would probably go over 2 or 3 times a year. Typically, it varied a bit, and obviously again a pandemic in the middle there.
And are they and in the US they're a manufacturer, but they
are not. So they run a dealer model in the US. So quite different.
And how old are the kids now, mate? Are they 20s?
I've got, yes. So my eldest is, got to get this right now, about to turn 22, then almost 21 and about to turn 18. So my youngest is doing year 12, HSC.
And you're going to say they're at Barker or Knox or something?
Yes.
Like
my youngest is at Knox. Great school. But look, I can start to sort of see, I think I've got one more school fee to pay.
Yeah.
Then I'm done.
The light.
Yes. And they're all got the cars and driving and doing their own things now. So again, it felt time for me to do something else. So what am I doing now? Probably what you'd call a portfolio career now. I'm doing a few things. Really getting focused on board roles.
Have you done them along the way?
Yeah, I have.
Because I looked back and it's like it looks like you've, even though that's your side hustle has been helping other people, like back in Banjos, there was you helped put a board together.
Yes.
Has it been that long that you've sort of jumped in and
Yep. So some non-executive, but when you're the MD, you're on the board, right? So you're a director of the company. So I've been directors of many of the businesses I've been involved with, but I've done a few sort of side director deals as well. And so interested in advisory board staff, board stuff, but and looking at some other opportunities as well at the moment. So doing a few bits and pieces, and I got to say, having a ball doing it.
That's right.
Yeah.
Having the grey matter ticking over, that's good.
Absolutely. Well, I expected to actually be a bit less busy, but I haven't even managed to cram in all the things I thought I would.
Yeah. Didn't take up golf or?
I haven't taken up golf.
Still sailing, yeah.
I should be. But
and with those roles, like you obviously this theme of the podcast is around franchising, and you've got, most of your career is in franchising, but it seems like the roles are outside franchising as much as inside.
Oh, I'm doing a bit of both.
That's what I'm saying, a bit of both. So.
Yeah, look, there's one company, it's a manufacturing business that I'm doing some work with, because I've now got such great sort of manufacturing back end. So you get the industry parallels as well as the franchising piece, but also playing quite heavily in the franchising space still, because that's 30 years of my life and experience.
So, question John asked: is franchising broken as a model? Like, there's lots of, there's in the if you're reading the papers, it is.
Yeah.
So, look, you're on the ground. Is it broken?
So far from it, in my view. I think, and so many good stories, and many that I could recount from my sort of time over the years. No, I think it's absolutely here to stay.
So you've got some, across the brands, franchisee success story where, people have come in and wouldn't have been successful but for the franchise model.
Yeah, seen great success across so many people. And
any that stand out?
Geez.
Put you on the spot.
So many. What's a good one? remember back in my OPSM days, we did quite a bit of conversion franchising.
Oh yeah.
And we had someone. She in fact 3 days old. She was on a boat out of Vietnam as a refugee. Ended up in Australia, educated in Australia, became an optometrist, and set up a practice out at Tamworth, and a great practice. And we converted that to an OPSM store, and I'm sure we weren't the making of her, but such a great story of from refugee to business owner to franchisee, and running a really strong business. That's one that certainly
that's awesome.
think of as a success.
The franchise, the
massive,
conversion.
yeah.
We've got a couple of businesses that we've invested in, and conversion is a topic that comes up at a bit around our boardroom table as well. Is to, the challenges of someone who's been there, done it themselves, and so, they obviously, if you approach them, they may not have thought they needed to be part of a bigger brand, and then they've got to follow a system, but they're not used to following a system because they were the boss.
Yep.
But then, as you were saying before, like the uplift in sales, is there an uplift in sales? You went from corporate to franchise. What about conversion franchises? How do you demonstrate that value to them? And then how do you help them get?
Yeah,
to
and
the
I
next
think
level?
that varies very much as a function of the brand, and I've done it in different ways. Certainly back in the optical days, we would sit down and go through all the metrics of a business and say, well, what do you do for conversion rate, if you like? And well, these are our numbers, and we would have a high, medium, and a low. So you can say, where do you think you're going to land? Okay, well then you've got upside opportunity, and these are products you don't have. What do you think you can sell? We'd really go through that in quite some detail. I think also the thing that people probably overlook is, again, when it comes time to sell, and you want to sell a business inside a franchise brand, I'll call it a relatively easy process because there's probably a team of people there to help you along through that process. Can you get a better multiple? Probably. I think there can be a lot of advantages when it ultimately comes time to sell, as well as the journey.
So they're getting a better return on investment than they were getting as an independent.
Yeah.
And you can show, because when you've got 150 of them, you can
Correct.
show you've got data.
Yep.
And do you think, is there proof out there that as a franchise that they will get a higher multiple?
There's some level of proof, but of course, proof probably is a very strong word, right? So there's definitely case studies, but business valuation, you have to be onto it. You have to think about when you're going to exit your business. You have to think about how well that business is being run. You've got to think about the people you got in your business and the back end and the growth of that business and all those sorts of things, because the multiple you can get for the best business in a brand versus the worst business in a brand, massively different. And so I think the opportunity is there and the evidence of that is there. It's always going to be up to the operator, the franchisee, to extract the most out of that opportunity.
I'm going to pick your brains later because I'm very keen to hear because as Bruce said, we're going through it at the moment, and what converting underperforming businesses into higher turnover and how long that takes.
Yep.
Taking them back and then.
But that's also taking back underperforming franchise businesses as opposed to converting a non-franchise business into a franchise business.
I think you have to be patient. I remember one transaction I did, big business, took me 26 months from the first conversation to settlement.
Yeah.
26 months.
A long road.
It's a long road. But we got there, and so you have to be patient and deal with the opportunity, the seller, whatever that might look like, and find ways to make them comfortable. I think trust is a massive piece of the equation.
Yeah, big time.
As well as whatever the numbers or the metrics or the plan might look like.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's interesting. How long we got?
Any more questions? Yeah, we'd go to a final question, but you've got.
No, it's just my stomach.
Yeah, you're hungry?
Have you noticed that? I haven't eaten. Andrew, where's all the food, mate?
Yeah. We haven't got any food. But last question we normally ask people in this set is, tips for franchisors. So a lot of the people, that the podcast is very specific. It's the people in the franchising sector.
Yeah.
So tips for either emerging franchisors or even big ones that need to remodel their system, because you've been at a bit of both. So.
Yeah, look, and I think this is gonna be a parallel to where perhaps where I'm sort of heading, if you like. But I remember back in the day we used to do 5-year plans, right? We'd have a view of where we wanted to be over the next 5 years, and off you go. I think that's really hard to do now. If you think about pandemics and economic
Technology,
downturns, AI technology, and
How quickly
tariffs and
everything's moving.
all that stuff. Can you
Yeah.
really do a 5-year plan and try to think about where you might be in 5? It's difficult. But
Yeah.
I think thinking strategically is still massively important, and having a model that you can dynamically do that on a regular basis, I think is super critical. I think then when I think about advisors or advisory boards or boards, I think people probably underdo that stuff of, have you got the people in your corner that can help you out when you need it? And maybe that is at a strategic level. Maybe it is when a crisis comes along. If you think about an advisory board type, so you might be able to pay for a day for someone per month, really cheap, but have some awesome people that you get for that one day. So I think some of that stuff. I then think, what's your operating rhythm kind of look like? How do you run your business, and what are your points of importance over a year, be it an annual plan, a quarterly check-in, monthly looking at numbers? What does your rhythm look like, and is it working for you? Do you need to rethink about that? So I think from the strategic advisory right through the operational, I think have a think through, and is that working for you?
And it's tricky, isn't it? Because we work with some smaller ones, and the founders get caught up in the weeds, and they just need to pop up, and they're accountable to themselves, and they're busy, and they're stressed, and they're tired, and all these things are happening, and they don't have the resources often, and they think they can't afford anything. Possibly they can't, because they're caught up. So it's interesting. You say
I reckon they could afford a couple of good people for a day a month.
Yeah, no, it's good.
And that might be a very good return.
Yeah, I think definitely just keeping you in those guide rails is a big thing, and I agree 100%. There's so much that says for making sure that people know what they need to do every day, and making sure that they do it every day.
Yeah, accountability is part of it.
It's just basic stuff.
It is,
but it's very rarely done well.
Thank you very much, mate. Thanks for coming in.
It's been
Thank
a pleasure.
you.
Enjoyed your
Nice
fucking
chat.
story.
So for anyone who's watching, remember to like the podcast and remember to share it. Thank you very much.